I hope you're doing all right tonight. Wherever you are, whatever kind of day you've had, I'm glad you're here. Because sometimes the quiet we search for comes with its own kind of sound. Some houses don't creak because they're old. They creak because something still walks their halls. And tonight I have 8 stories to share. 8 places where the walls remember where silence speaks and where leaving is never as simple as locking the door. If you're ready, let's begin. Story 1. The room with the locked phone. It started with a sound he couldn't place. Soft at first, buried beneath the hum of his monitor and the rattle of the AC unit on its last leg. A vibration. Faint but insistent. Like a phone buzzing on wood. But his phone was silent. He checked. Nothing. No texts, no missed calls. It wasn't his. The sound returned the next night. Same time, same pitch. At first he blamed the neighbors, then the walls, then his own exhaustion. But on the 3rd night, curiosity pulled him off the couch. The vibration came from the guest room. The door was closed, though he didn't remember closing it. When he opened it, he found the source. An old flip phone, black-scratched battery cover taped on sitting on the dresser. He had never seen it before, never owned one like it. The screen was dark, but as he stared, it lit up. One vibration, then a message. 4 words. Don't let her in. His chest tightened. He didn't know why. Maybe it was the way the phone had no signal. Or the way the timestamp read 12:06 a.m. exactly. Or maybe it was the fact that he lived alone. He placed the phone in a drawer and returned to bed, tried to laugh it off. But the vibration came again and again, always at the same time, always with the same message. He stopped opening it, but every night the buzzing grew louder, sharper, like it knew it was being ignored. On the 6th night, he unplugged his router, thinking maybe someone was playing a trick. The house went still. He waited. Midnight passed. At 12:06, the phone screamed. Not a buzz, a shriek, a sound that tore through the room like a siren made of teeth. He ran to it, opened the screen, and the message had changed. She's outside. Don't open. He turned. The hallway beyond the room was dim, lit only by the faint glow of the kitchen light. He stepped forward slow, each foot heavier than the last. At the front door, he hesitated. There was no knock, no sound, just stillness. Then from the other side, a whisper, barely audible, a woman's voice. Please, I'm cold. Just 1 second. Just open the door. He didn't move, didn't breathe. The voice was familiar, not in content but in tone. It sounded like someone who knew him, who knew his name, though she never said it. His fingers hovered over the lock, and then he stepped back, went to bed, slept with the lights on. In the morning, the phone was gone. The drawer was empty. He searched the house, every room, every cabinet, nothing. But that night, the vibration returned, this time from under his bed. He didn't check. He couldn't. Weeks passed. He started sleeping during the day, wearing headphones at night. But no matter what he did at 12:06, the sound returned, always from a different place, behind the bathroom mirror, inside the wall, once even from the back of his closet. The messages grew stranger, not warnings anymore, just fragments. She remembers. The basement. You left the light on. It's not your house. He never had a basement. Not here. Not in this house. But the words wormed their way inside, carved doubt into his memory. He stopped inviting people over. Stopped talking about it. No one would believe him anyway. Until one night the vibration didn't come. Midnight passed. Silence held. And for the first time in weeks he exhaled. Then came the knock. 3 soft raps at the front door, followed by the phone's shriek impossibly loud. He didn't remember picking it up, But suddenly it was in his hands again. The screen glowing, message blinking. It's already inside. He dropped the phone, turned. The hallway was dark, too dark, like the lights had been swallowed. From the shadows came the softest whisper, "Welcome home." The door behind him slammed shut. The lights flickered, and when they came back on, he was gone. Only the phone remained, sitting on the hallway floor screen, cracked buzzing once every night at 12:06. Still sending messages, still waiting for someone else to find it. The room stays locked now. No one rents it. The landlord says it's under repair, but the cleaning lady swears she hears it. Every night, the vibration, the whisper, the warning. Some phones don't need signal, they just need fear. Some houses don't need haunting, they just need remembering. And some things once let in never leave. Some warnings come as whispers, others as messages that repeat until you finally pay attention. But what if the thing trying to reach you doesn't knock? It glows. Let's move on. Story 2. The Blue Light on Meadow Lane. The house on Meadow Lane was supposed to be a new beginning. For Callie and her daughter Ava, it was the first time they had a place to call their own. A quiet little rental tucked between two empty lots with a chain link fence and just enough yard for a garden. The price was low, the neighbors were kind, and the landlord was never around, which suited Callie fine. After the divorce, after everything, silence felt like mercy. The house creaked like all old houses do, especially at night, but Ava slept soundly and Callie tried to. She painted the kitchen yellow, hung wind chimes on the porch, grew basil in a chipped teacup by the window. Life was slow, predictable, safe, until the light started. It began on a Tuesday. At exactly 3 a.m., the motion light in the backyard flicked on. Callie watched it from the window above the sink, half asleep, assuming it was a raccoon or maybe a cat. But the light stayed on. 5 minutes. 10. She waited, then turned away. It shut off the moment she moved. The next night it happened again. Same time, same pattern. This time she stepped outside. The air was still colder than it should have been. Nothing moved, no wind, no animals. But the blue-tinted bulb buzzed faintly overhead, humming like it was thinking. The third night, Ava woke up screaming. Not the cry of a bad dream. The kind of scream that rips through your throat. Callie ran to her room and found her standing at the window, pointing at the light. "He was there," Ava whispered. "He was standing under it." "Who?" Callie asked, heart pounding. Ava didn't answer. She just climbed back into bed and curled under the blanket like nothing had happened. The next morning, Callie changed the bulb, bought a white one, tried to forget. But that night at 3 a.m., the light came back on. Blue again. She checked the bulb. It hadn't changed. Ava didn't scream that night, but she didn't sleep either. She sat up, staring at the window, eyes glassy. The light stayed on for exactly 33 minutes, then clicked off. The pattern continued. Every night. Always at 3s at always blue. One night, Callie unplugged the light entirely. That night, the kitchen light flickered. The TV turned itself on to static. Ava whispered in her sleep, something in a voice too deep, too old. "Don't look at him. He's not finished." Callie plugged the light back in the next morning. She stopped asking questions, but the unease settled in her bones. She started noticing other things. Ava drew pictures of a man with no face, circles for eyes, no mouth, no hands, always standing under the blue light, always watching. When asked, Ava shrugged. "He's just sad," she said once. "He's not mad at us. He's waiting. For what? To be let in." Callie stopped asking. She started locking the back door with 3 bolts. She placed a chair under the knob. She thought about moving, but money was tight and part of her still hoped it would pass. Then one night, Callie stayed up. She sat at the window with a notepad, determined to record whatever happened. At 3 hours, the light turned on. Nothing stood beneath it. She squinted, nothing moved. But then her pen started writing. She wasn't holding it. It scratched slowly across the paper. 3 words. Let him speak. She threw the pen across the room. The light flickered. Ava's bedroom door creaked open. Callie ran, found her daughter standing barefoot in the hallway. "He says you remember Ava," said, voice flat. "He says you heard him before." Callie froze. A memory returned like a punch. The night she fled the apartment years ago. The whisper outside her window. The phone that rang once at 3:00 a.m. and never again. She had ignored it, blocked it out, thought it was done. But nothing ever leaves when you don't listen. That night, Callie dreamed of the light, but this time she was inside it. Cold, frozen, unable to move or speak, watching the house through a blue haze, watching herself, Ava, the life they built, trapped. The next morning, Ava said, "He's quieter now." Callie nodded. She understood. That evening, she stood beneath the light. It didn't flicker. It buzzed softly. She whispered, "I'm sorry." The light turned off. For the first time in weeks, the night was dark, peaceful. But when she turned to go inside, she saw it. Another light. In the attic. One that had never been there before. Blue. Buzzing. Waiting. Callie didn't remember walking back inside. She didn't remember putting Ava to bed. But she woke up the next morning on the couch, a crick in her neck and soil on her hands. Outside, the garden had been torn up. Basil pulled from its pot, teacup shattered. A small mound of dirt, shaped like a child's handprint, sat in the middle of the flower bed. She didn't ask Ava. Ava didn't speak about it. She only stared at the ceiling like something up there was watching back. Callie stopped checking the light. She pulled the curtains and never opened them after dark. But she knew when it came on. Her skin would chill. Her pulse would stutter. The air would thicken with the hum. One night she heard footsteps on the back porch. Not heavy, not slow. Rhythmic, familiar. Ava slept through it, or pretended to. Callie sat in the kitchen, knife clutched in hand, heart beating fast and loud and everywhere. But no one came in. The door never turned. The sound faded when the light shut off. That morning, Ava drew something new. Not the faceless man this time. A house, their house, with every window glowing blue. When asked, she shrugged. He said the house will remember when we forget. Who's he, Ava? The light, she whispered. He lives in it now. Callie started researching. The house had no history online. No records before 1991. No original building permit. Nothing. As if it had appeared fully built in a gap between paperwork. She checked local archives. Everything stopped at Meadow Lane. The neighbors didn't know who lived there before, or pretended not to. The postman avoided their mailbox. Once she caught him staring at the roof before shaking his head and driving off without delivering anything. She asked the landlord if there'd been any issues. He said no. Then, as if forgetting the call, sent her an email the next day with a single line. "The house listens. Please stop asking." That night the light stayed off. Callie dared to hope. She slept soundly, but Ava did not. At 3:00 a.m., Callie woke to find her daughter gone. The back door open. The yard bathed in soft humming blue. Ava stood beneath the light arms, out face turned upward, eyes wide and unblinking. The humming deepened. Callie ran outside, barefoot, heart tearing. She reached her daughter and touched her shoulder. Ava turned slowly. Her eyes were glowing blue, just for a moment. Then they dimmed. "He's inside now," she said. "He wants to stay." They left the next day, packed everything they could fit in the car, left behind the chipped teacup, the pictures on the fridge, the yellow paint peeling above the sink. They didn't speak as they drove. Not until hours later, on a highway far from the quiet streets and perfect fences, Ava asked, "Do you think he'll miss us?" Callie didn't answer. She wasn't sure. Months passed. They lived in a new place now, smaller, brighter. Ava went back to drawing flowers and cats and stick figures. Callie didn't look at motion lights anymore. One evening, while unpacking a final box, she found the broken blue bulb. She didn't remember taking it, didn't remember packing it, but there it was, resting between old photographs and a snow globe from a place they hadn't visited in years. That night, the hallway light flickered. Ava slept, but Callie sat by the door waiting. The light stayed off. Nothing hummed, no footsteps, no voices, just the distant sound of wind and her own breath. But she knew. The blue light didn't come from a bulb. It came from memory, from silence, from guilt. And guilt, once invited in, doesn't turn off. It waits, flickers, listens. Some lights show the way, others show the truth. But the worst lights, they don't shine to guide you. They shine to remind you. And some houses once lit never forget who stood under their glow. Lights fade, but time once fractured has a way of looping back. And some houses don't age. They remember you, whether you want them to or not. Story 3. The House That Stole Time. Harold Lane didn't move to Missoula for peace or nature or air. He moved for quiet, but not the kind that came from outside. He had spent 27 years lecturing in university halls, memorizing the cadence of history's failures, quoting philosophers whose lives ended in rooms emptier than their bookshelves. When his wife died, he left everything behind and bought a house no one wanted. A creaky old place at the end of a dirt road, shadowed by pines and covered in ivy, with a price so low the agent joked it came with ghosts. Harold didn't laugh. The house was silent when he arrived. Dust hung in the air like it had been waiting for him specifically. He unpacked one box, just books, and in the center of the living room an armchair that felt like memory. He sat, and that's when he noticed the ticking. Not from a clock he'd brought, but from somewhere inside the walls. Slow, consistent, rhythmic. At first he thought nothing of it. Old houses made sounds. He read for hours that night, then fell asleep in the chair, a book open across his chest. When he woke, the light was wrong, dimmer, as if the sun hadn't risen, but the clock on the wall said noon. He looked outside. The shadows were long, like morning. His phone had no signal, no date, just the time. Blinking 6:03. The same time he remembered falling asleep. He shook it off. Jet lag. Adjustment. But it happened again. And again. Every time he fell asleep in that chair, he woke into something not quite real. The world outside paused. The trees didn't move. The sky didn't change. Once he fell asleep in the afternoon and woke to the smell of firewood and the sound of a radio playing a war broadcast. But there was no fire, no radio, just the sense that someone had been in the room before he opened his eyes. He began testing it, setting alarms, wearing watches, placing objects in different spots. Each time he slept, something shifted. The books rearranged themselves. One night he woke with dirt under his fingernails and a page torn from a diary he didn't own clutched in his fist. It read, "I told her to stop sleeping in that chair. It wants things." He stopped using the chair, slept in the bedroom instead. But the dreams followed, always about the house, about people he didn't know. A woman in the attic counting seconds aloud. A boy in the basement digging through ash. A man at the window whispering to someone who wasn't there. Harold would wake with names in his mouth. Once he whispered Eleanor before realizing he had no idea who that was. One afternoon, he dozed off on the porch, just to blink. When he opened his eyes, the house looked different. The paint was fresh, the ivy trimmed. A car from the 1950s sat in the driveway. He stood shaken. Inside, the furniture had changed. The books were gone. In their place were sewing supplies, children's toys, a record player spinning silently. And a woman's voice called from the kitchen. "Harold, lunch is ready." He didn't move. He couldn't. She stepped out, wore a dress like the ones in old photographs. Her eyes met his like she'd known him all her life. But she wasn't anyone he recognized. And yet he felt something pull at him like memory, like deja vu with teeth. He backed out the door, closed his eyes, breathed. When he opened them, the house was as it had been. Dusty, empty, still. But the feeling didn't fade. The house wasn't haunted by ghosts, it was haunted by time. It didn't show him the past. It consumed it, replayed it, wove it into now. He tried leaving, packed a bag, made it halfway to the highway before the trees shifted, the sky dimmed, and he blinked awake in the chair again. Bag at his feet, keys in hand. The door never opened the same way twice after that. Sometimes it led to the kitchen, sometimes to a hallway he didn't recognize. Once it opened to a mirror, and in the reflection he saw himself 30 years younger, typing on a typewriter he never owned. The younger version looked up, smiled, said nothing, closed the door. Harold began writing things down. Dates, visions, clocks. The journal filled quickly, but when he tried to reread it, the pages were blank. Then written in someone else's handwriting. Then in his again, but recounting days he never lived. He gave up, sat in the chair one last time. And this time he didn't wake. Not in the way he knew waking. When the realtor brought a new couple, by weeks later, the house was just as she remembered it. Musty but sound. The books in the study seemed untouched, except for one on the coffee table. Open to a chapter called Occupants. The couple liked the place, made an offer, moved in. The man, a retired linguist, found the chair comfortable. A perfect place to nap. He fell asleep the first night and woke to a knock on the front door. He opened it and found an older gentleman in a tweed jacket standing there, notebook in hand, asking if the place had always had that mirror by the stairs. The man looked familiar. But before he could speak, the visitor smiled and said, "Don't worry, I live here too." Some houses don't remember who they belong to. They remember who stays. And time, once fractured, doesn't heal. It loops, it lingers, it learns. And sometimes it chooses. Sometimes a piece of furniture holds more than just weight. It holds what was left behind. And when no one listens long enough, grief learns how to cry on its own. Story 4. The Crying Chair in Unit 7. Unit 7 was cheap. That was the selling point. In a city where rent clawed at every paycheck and quiet was a luxury, the listing felt too good to be true. No roommates, all utilities included walking distance to a late-night corner store. Nora didn't ask why it hadn't been taken. She needed space. Distance. Something that didn't remind her of him. The building was old but sturdy, a squat brick complex nestled between two shuttered laundromats. The hallway smelled like paint and bleach, and the landlord barely looked up as he handed her the keys. "Don't move the chair," he said. "What chair?" "In the living room." He didn't elaborate. When she opened the door to Unit 7, the chair was the first thing she saw. A wooden rocker cracked in places, its fabric faded to the color of dried blood. It sat in the corner, angled slightly toward the window, like it had been watching something long before she arrived. It was ugly, but she left it. Not because of the landlord's warning, but because she was too tired to care. The first night was uneventful. A few creaks in the pipes, distant footsteps from above. She slept deeply for the first time in weeks. The second night she heard crying. Soft at first, like a child muffling sobs in their pillow. She sat up, heart hammering, listening. It came from the living room, from the chair. She turned on every light. The room was empty, but the chair rocked gently as if someone had just stood up. She didn't sleep after that. In the morning, she searched the apartment, floorboards, vents, even the walls, looking for cracks, for hidden speakers, anything. But the sound had no source. That night, the crying returned, louder, broken, the kind of cry that made your teeth ache. Nora stood in the doorway, staring at the chair, fist clenched. "Stop it," she whispered. It didn't. The chair rocked faster, then stopped. Completely, as if it was listening. She threw a blanket over it and went to bed, but the sound came back muffled beneath the fabric. Every night, same time, same place, always ending at exactly 3:17 a.m. She tried recording it. The microphone picked up nothing, just static. She called the landlord. He didn't answer. She left messages. Nothing. On the 7th night, she snapped, dragged the chair into the hallway and left it by the stairs, slammed her door, locked it, turned on music. The crying didn't come. Relief bloomed like warmth in her chest. Until morning. When she opened the front door, the chair was back, in the exact same spot. Not just in the room, in the same position, same angle, like it had never moved. The blanket was folded neatly on top. That day, she asked the neighbor across the hall about it. The old woman looked at her with eyes too tired to lie. "That chair's been here longer than I have," she said. "They say it belonged to the first tenant, the one who..." She stopped, shook her head. "Just don't sit in it." Nora nodded. She didn't plan to, but curiosity is a slow fire. The next night she stood in the dark watching it. The crying started on schedule. This time it was different. Less human. More like memory tearing through time. She stepped closer. The air around it felt thick, heavy. Her ears popped. She knelt beside the chair, whispered, "What do you want?" The crying stopped. Silence pressed against her. Then from behind her a whisper, "I want to be held." She turned. No one there. But the cushion of the chair sank slightly as if someone very small had just sat down. Nora backed away. Didn't sleep, didn't eat the next day. She stared at the chair from her bed, from the kitchen, from the hallway. The next night she sat across from it, waited. When the crying began, she didn't flinch. She listened, and after a while she spoke, told the room about her own grief. The phone calls that stopped, the nursery that stayed locked, the heartbeat that never came back. The crying paused, then resumed. Softer this time, less pained, as if acknowledging something shared. At 3:17 it stopped. The next night she sat in the chair, just for a moment, just to see. The cushion was warm, the wood creaked beneath her. She felt nothing, no cold breath, no shadow, just a weight, a pressure behind her ribs, a sadness that wasn't hers, but it fit perfectly. That night she dreamed of a baby's room, pale green walls, a mobile of stars turning above a crib. In the corner sat the chair, and in the chair a woman who looked like her holding a child whose face was always just out of view. In the morning she woke with tears drying on her cheeks and the blanket folded in her lap. The crying never came again, but she kept the chair, cleaned it, repaired the cracked leg, reupholstered the seat. She never told anyone. When she moved out, she left it exactly where it had been. Same angle, same light, same promise. The next tenant asked about it. The landlord said nothing, just handed them the key and said, "Don't move the chair. Some grief doesn't ask to be solved. It only wants to be heard. And some rooms hold on to sorrow not to haunt you, but to remember that once someone loved so deeply, they never left the seat where it ended." Not every haunting begins in the walls. Some echo through machines, through melodies, through sounds you thought only existed in your childhood. Story 5, The Fridge That Hums Her Song. When Elise and Jordan bought the house in Mobile, Alabama, they thought it was a steal. It was their first home together. A single-story cottage tucked beneath oak trees with chipped blue shutters and a rose garden gone wild. The kitchen was outdated. The wallpaper peeling the floor creaked in the hallway, but it was theirs. No landlord, no upstairs neighbors, just quiet and potential. They planned to renovate it room by room, starting with the kitchen. Elise didn't mind the old appliances. The oven was stubborn, the sink gurgled, but it was the fridge that unsettled her. Not because it didn't work, it worked too well. Whisper quiet most of the time, but every night around 10-11 p.m. it began to hum. Not a mechanical hum, not a vibration, a tune, a melody soft and winding like someone humming from inside the walls. The first time it happened, Elise thought it was in her head. A long day, a trick of fatigue. But the second night it hummed again. Same time, same tune. She didn't recognize the melody, not exactly, but it felt familiar. Like something she'd known once, deep in the body, not the brain. She asked Jordan if he heard it. He paused, listened, then shook his head. "It's just the motor," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. The humming continued, always at 10:11, always for exactly 3 minutes. Elise began recording it, played it back on her phone, but there was never any sound, only silence. Until one night she played it with headphones and swore she heard something layered beneath. A second voice, soft, female, humming along. That night she had a dream. Her mother sitting on a porch swing brushing Elise's hair, humming the same tune. She hadn't thought about that in years. Her mother had died when Elise was 5. She had no clear memory of her face, only photos. No memory of her voice, only fragments. But this was something else. A muscle memory from the soul. Elise asked her aunt the next day if her mother used to sing. Her aunt said yes. A lullaby. A made-up melody. No words, no recording, just something she hummed when Elise was upset. Elise didn't say anything else. That night the fridge hummed again. This time Jordan heard it. He turned to her slowly and whispered, "Okay, that's not normal." Elise smiled. "I think it's her." Jordan didn't laugh. He didn't dismiss it, but he didn't agree either. He just said, "Let's unplug it tonight." They did. Pulled it from the wall, watched the lights flicker off inside, went to bed. At 10:11 it hummed anyway. Elise woke first. The sound drifted from the kitchen, soft and slow. She walked in barefoot on tile heart beating like a drum. The fridge was unplugged. Still it sang. Not loudly, not clearly, but undeniably. She stood there, eyes stinging, and whispered, "I remember." The humming paused. The kitchen light flickered once, then silence. The next day, Elise found something wedged behind the fridge. An old cassette, no label, dust-covered. She borrowed a player from a thrift store and listened. Static, then humming. Her mother's voice, the same melody. A recording made for no one but herself. Elise played it over and over, memorized the rhythm. That night she hummed with the fridge. They harmonized. For the first time in years, she felt held. Safe. Jordan grew distant. He didn't like the fridge. Said it was messing with her. Said it made him dream of things he didn't understand. Hallways that went nowhere. Doors that opened to darkness. He asked her to get rid of it. She refused. It's not just a fridge, she said. It's her. It's not her, he said. It's something pretending to be. They fought. He left for a weekend trip. The fridge hummed louder, longer. Elise didn't mind. She started talking to it. Left notes on the door like she used to do for her mother as a child. The humming responded. Once when she cried in front of it, the hum shifted into a new melody. A song she hadn't heard since preschool. It was gentle, intentional, loving. When Jordan returned, he unplugged the fridge again, removed it from the wall, hauled it to the garage, replaced it with a brand new one. That night, the new fridge hummed. Elise smiled. Jordan didn't. He slept on the couch, dreamt of drowning in cold light, of hands pulling him into the kitchen. He left the next day. Elise stayed. The house was hers now, fully. She repainted the walls, replanted the roses, but she kept the fridge, moved it back in, plugged it into the wall like an old friend. And every night at 10:11 it hummed. Never longer, never louder, always just enough to remind her she was not alone. Visitors sometimes commented on the sound, asked if it was a radio, a machine, a trick. Elise only smiled, said it's an old house, it remembers things. And when they left, she stood in the kitchen, placed a hand on the fridge door and whispered, "Thank you." Some memories don't fade, they hum. Through metal, through wires, through time. And some voices don't need words to be heard, they find you. Especially if you're quiet enough to listen. And while sound can carry memory, windows can carry something else. Not everything they show leads outside. Sometimes they lead deeper in. Story 6. The house with the extra window. The cabin wasn't supposed to have a view. That was part of the charm. Tucked into the pines just outside Bangor, it was small, cold in the mornings, and held together more by memory than nails. But for Thomas, it was perfect. He needed quiet. He needed isolation. After the accident, after the questions and the pity after the funeral, he couldn't sit through. The cabin was the only place where the world didn't expect him to explain himself. He brought only what mattered. A stack of notebooks, a laptop he barely touched, and a framed photo he couldn't look at without shaking. He wrote in longhand now. Words poured more honestly that way. Every morning he sat at the old wooden desk by the window, drinking coffee and scribbling thoughts too heavy for daylight. The view was simple, just trees endless and tall, swaying with the kind of grace that made time feel irrelevant. Then, on the 12th day, the window changed. It was subtle at first, a shift in angle maybe. The trees looked closer or taller or wrong somehow. The light through the glass hit his skin colder than it had before. He blamed fatigue, blamed grief. But the next morning, the view changed again. This time, there was a figure, far out near the base of one of the older trees. Still, facing the cabin. Thomas blinked, rubbed his eyes. When he looked again, the figure was gone. He didn't mention it in his notebook. He wrote about the wind, the quiet, the way his hands ached when he tried to remember her voice. But not the figure, not the cold, not the whisper he thought he heard when he lay down to sleep. On the 15th day, Thomas noticed something impossible. A second window. It was smaller square, set into the wall opposite the original. He'd never seen it before. He checked old photos of the cabin from the listing. No window. He tapped the wall. It felt older, softer. The window didn't look outside. It showed another angle of the forest from higher up. The trees bent at odd shapes. The light beyond it was dusk, even though it was only morning. He shut the door to that room and didn't open it again for 2 days. When he finally looked through the new window again, the figure had returned. Closer now. Still too far to make out a face, but definitely human. Standing. Waiting. He wrote nothing. Burned the page before it dried. On the 18th day, the original window changed. It now looked out into fog. Nothing else. Just endless white, like the world had drowned in mist. Thomas walked outside expecting to see fog, but the forest was clear. Trees, sun, crisp air. But when he returned inside, the window still showed fog. And the other one, now glowing faintly blue, showed the figure standing at the tree line. He taped paper over both windows, tried to ignore them. The next morning, the paper was gone, neatly folded and stacked on his desk. Both windows clean. The figure gone. That night, he dreamed of standing outside the cabin, watching himself from the tree line. His reflection waved, but he didn't. When he woke, the bed was wet with morning dew. On the 21st day, the second window was open, just a crack. Enough to let in the cold, enough to let in the sound, the hum, low and constant like wind passing through teeth. He nailed it shut. The next day it was open again. He stared out for an hour, heart thudding until the figure returned. Standing just a few feet beyond the glass, close enough now to see what it held, a notebook, his, open to a blank page. Thomas fell back. The window slammed shut without touch. He packed that night. Clothes, notebooks, the photo frame. When he opened the front door, Forrest stared back. No path, no clearing, just endless trees where his car had once been. He ran around the cabin. Every direction led back to the porch. He tried calling. No signal, no bars, no time. When he returned inside, a new window had appeared, this one in the ceiling, showing stars that didn't belong to this world. He sat on the floor, rocked slowly. Began to write. Not about the windows. About her. Her voice. Her hands. Her laugh when she told him not to drive that night. The silence after. The light in her eyes before it vanished in shattered glass. The guilt. The weight. The way no place would let him forget. The next day, one of the windows was gone. Boarded over from the outside. A note pinned to the wood. Thank you. You're almost done. The original window showed sky again. The second one stayed closed. Thomas no longer slept. He wrote. He watched. He listened. Every day a new window appeared. In drawers, under the table, behind mirrors. Each one showing a different moment. Some his, some not. All real. All honest. On the 30th day, he looked through the first window and saw himself inside the cabin. Older, worn, but calm, writing, at peace. He smiled, sat down, picked up his pen. The next day, the cabin was found empty, abandoned, all windows boarded, all doors locked from the inside. No sign of Thomas, but sometimes hikers say they see a cabin through the trees where there shouldn't be one. A flash of glass, a face at the window, watching, writing, waiting. Some windows don't show the outside. They show what's left inside you, and once they appear, they don't close. Not until you do. What you see in the mirror might not be you, and if it moves when you don't, maybe you're the reflection after all. Story 7. The Mirror That Shows Mornings Only. The mirror was the only thing left behind. The apartment was unfurnished, dusty, and smelled faintly of mildew, but mounted above the sink in the bathroom was a mirror with a thick silver frame, cool to the touch, and too heavy to remove. The landlord had said the last tenant left in a hurry. He hadn't gone into detail. Elaine didn't press. She liked the stillness, the way the city sounds died just beyond the door, the way the light slanted through the windows like the place hadn't moved in years. After the divorce, she wanted silence, wanted a space that didn't remind her of a shared life or shared failures. The mirror, though, was strange. It worked, but only in the morning. At night, the glass turned black. Not reflective, not clouded, just void. She noticed it on her second night. Brushing her teeth around 11, she glanced up and saw nothing. No room, no walls, no her, just black. She touched the surface. Cold, flat, real. She turned on more lights. Nothing changed. She thought it might be the bulb, the angle fatigue. But every morning, like clockwork, the reflection returned. Clear, crisp, as if the mirror only believed in reality during daylight. She joked about it in a text to a friend, but didn't think much of it until the 5th night. That was the first time she thought she saw movement in the glass. Not a reflection, a shape. Quick, slipping past the edges. She froze, stared, waited. Nothing. Just darkness. She went to bed uneasy, left the bathroom light on, door cracked. The next night she tested it. Turned off all lights, then flicked them on one by one. Still nothing in the glass. Only that black surface, silent and watching. She placed a sticky note on the corner of the mirror. The next morning, it was gone. She found it folded neatly on the floor. Blank. She started writing down what she saw. Little things. The way her reflection seemed slower in the morning. The way it sometimes blinked when she didn't. She chalked it up to stress, isolation, recovery. Until the night she walked past the mirror without looking and heard something inside it breathe. Not loudly, just a single soft exhale. She stopped, turned. The mirror was dark, still. She leaned closer, put her ear to the glass. Nothing. But the air smelled different. Old, stale, like dust sealed behind walls. She asked the landlord again about the mirror. He shrugged, said it came with the building. Too heavy to remove. Most people cover it, he said, or stop noticing. Elaine noticed. She began dreaming in black, floating in a space where the only light came from behind her. In the dream, she walked toward the light but never reached it. She always woke up cold, damp, breathing like she'd been underwater. Then one morning, the mirror showed her room but without her. Just the bed, the window, the tiles, but no Elaine. She stared, blinked, looked down at her hands, lifted her fingers. Nothing moved in the mirror. She stepped back. Still nothing. The reflection remained empty. The next morning, everything was back to normal. She saw herself moving in sync, but her eyes were wrong, off, tilted too low. She tested it, raised her left hand. The reflection raised its right. She laughed nervously, then frowned. The reflection kept smiling. That night, she covered the mirror, taped a towel over it, slept better than she had in weeks. No dreams, no whispers, just silence. The next morning, the towel was folded on the counter. The mirror gleamed. She stared into it and asked quietly, "What are you?" The reflection didn't answer, but for a moment she swore she saw something behind her, a figure half-shaded standing in the hallway. When she turned, the space was empty. Her breath fogged the glass. She wiped it. Her reflection didn't. She staggered back. That day, she didn't go to work. She sat at her table, phone in hand, trying to decide who she could tell, who would believe her. At dusk, the mirror darkened again. She watched it from the hallway. It stayed black. She waited. Hours passed. At 3:17 a.m., she woke to the sound of the bathroom door creaking open. Slowly, deliberately. She hadn't left it open. She moved carefully. Quiet. The door was wide now. The room inside dark. The mirror faintly glowing like moonlight on still water. And in the mirror she saw herself. Sleeping. In bed. Peaceful. But then the reflection moved. Sat up. turned to look directly at her. She ran. Out of the apartment, down the stairs, into the night. She didn't return until sunrise. When she stepped inside, the bathroom was quiet. The mirror clear, her reflection normal, but the bed was still warm, as if someone had just been lying there. That evening, she called a contractor, asked how much it would cost to remove the mirror. He came the next day, looked it over, knocked on the wall behind it, frowned. "That's not a wall," he said. "That's a door someone sealed shut." "What's behind it?" she asked. "Don't know, but something's trying to push through." She told him to leave it. That night she slept with every light on. The mirror glowed faintly in the dark, not a reflection, a window, and through it she saw her other self, still smiling, still watching, still waiting. Some mirrors don't show you. They show what's looking for you, and if you stare long enough, eventually it sees you too. But not all hauntings live in mirrors or windows. Some wait at the end of a hallway, still watching, waiting for you to get close enough to recognize them. Story 8. The Man at the End of the Hall. There were 6 rooms in the old boarding house on Fannin Street, but only one hallway. Narrow, uneven, and always just a little too dark, no matter how many bulbs the landlord replaced. Darren didn't care. He needed cheap and temporary. A place to breathe while his bank account caught up with the damage of starting over. He'd just left everything Job City girlfriend all in the rearview mirror of a rental car. Fannin Street wasn't home, but it was quiet. Quiet except for the hallway. On his second night, he noticed the door at the end. It was always closed. Brass knob-chipped paint frame warped from age. The landlord had said it was a supply closet, but Darren never saw anyone go in or out. No noise, no creaking, no change, just stillness, except at night. At night, the crack beneath the door glowed faintly. Not yellow like the hallway lights, not white like a flashlight, but blue, cold, dim, pulsing like breath. The first night he saw it, he stared from his doorway for a while, then went to bed. The second night he stood in the hallway just a few steps closer. The air near the door felt different. Not cold, exactly flat, like a room with no windows, no circulation. He leaned down, once peered into the gap. Just shadow. But as he stood, he thought he saw something move. A shape. A shift. Something leaning just beyond the frame as if listening through the door. He didn't sleep well after that. The third night, the light came on again. This time he heard something. Not words, not footsteps. A shuffle, like fabric sliding across wood. He backed into his room, locked the door. The next morning, the hallway was dark. The door unchanged. No one else in the house mentioned it. The woman in room 2 nodded politely, eyes tired. The man upstairs never spoke at all. Darren told himself it was imagination, just a flicker in light, nothing more. But the dreams disagreed. He began dreaming of the hallway, endless, warped, like it looped into itself. At the end stood a figure, always still, always watching, never speaking. He never saw its face, just the silhouette, one hand always resting on the doorknob. Every time he approached, he woke in a cold sweat. One morning, the landlord came by to fix a leak. Darren asked again about the door. The man frowned. "We don't use that one. It doesn't open. It's glowing," Darren said. "At night. There's someone behind it." The landlord shook his head. "Hasn't been opened in 20 years. Let it be." That night the light returned. This time there was a shadow on the floor. A pair of feet just visible beneath the door, facing out, waiting. Darren stayed in his room. He thought about calling someone, but who? The police, a friend. No one would believe him, so he waited. At 3:13 a.m., the light went out. The hallway fell silent. The next day, Darren placed tape across the crack of the door. A thin line. If someone opened it, he'd know. That night, the tape was gone. Not torn, not broken, just gone. Like it had never existed. He opened his door slowly. The hallway was empty, but on the floor beneath the door, something waited. A coin. Old, worn, too cold to touch. He picked it up, turned it over. No markings, no country, just a smooth face and a rough edge. When he dropped it, it rolled into the dark and vanished. The landlord stopped answering calls. The hallway light flickered constantly now. The bulb buzzed like it was trying to say something. Darren stopped dreaming, but he didn't feel rested. He woke every morning more tired than before, like something was visiting him in sleep and taking pieces away. One night he sat by the door with a notebook. He wanted to record everything. The time, the color, the sound. He sat for hours. At 2:59 a.m., the light began to glow, faint, blue. The doorknob turned, just once, a full deliberate rotation. But the door didn't open. He wrote the word, turned, in capital letters. The next day, that page was gone, torn clean from the book. In its place was a note in handwriting he didn't recognize. 4 words, "You're at the end." He stopped writing after that. One night he opened the door, slowly, carefully. The hallway was silent, the blue glow brighter now. His feet moved without his permission. Down the hall, toward the door. He reached out, touched the knob. Cold. It didn't turn, but the light pulsed once, and from the other side he heard a voice, his own, whispering, "It's time." The door didn't open, but the world shifted. The hallway stretched, the walls breathed, and Darren stepped back into his room, back into silence. The next morning, his door was locked from the inside. The landlord broke it open at noon. The room was empty, no sign of struggle, no suitcase, no clothes, just a single coin on the bed. Old, cold, smooth-faced. He's never been found, but every tenant since has asked the same question. Who's standing at the end of the hall? And every landlord has given the same answer. That door doesn't open. Some doors aren't meant to. Some hallways lead you forward. Others pull you in. And some shadows don't chase you. They wait until you come close enough to recognize your own. Some houses stay haunted, not by ghosts, but by choices, by regrets, by moments that never finish becoming memories. If any of these stories made you feel like you've been somewhere similar, you're not alone. What we bury in the dark has a way of shining through the cracks, and sometimes it just needs someone to listen. Thank you for being here, for remembering, for staying with me until the end. I'll be here next time, waiting where the quiet lingers longest.